to have you. We are live right now. I hope that you all can tune in, and it looks like I have a little, monitor here to see who's in here. So excited to be joining you guys today. Final out of London, 13-11 Denver. This is a really interesting thing, an interesting week that we have for Generation Orange. So, just basic rundown. I'm Adriana. This is my father, Les. We're so excited to have you today. If you could, please make sure you like and subscribe before we get started. That way, we can always stay in touch with you guys. We're so excited for today to be live and see what you guys have to say because, man, there's a lot to talk about today after this game.
Yeah, what a strange game, you know? You watch a lot of football and then once in a while there's a game where you're like, "Oh wow, I've never seen that before." Like the end of the half. And then that final drive, the final possession that the Jets had, I'm thinking to myself, we've only allowed like 80 some yards defensively. You know, the defense
Right.
really only gave up the one field goal, and yet this game is hanging in the balance somehow.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
weird.
It was really, man. I'll just say this, and then I want to obviously get your thoughts as well. But I don't like the idea of these international games to begin with, uh, just because I woke up at 6 a.m. this morning. You woke up at 6 a.m. this morning. A lot of Jets fans woke up at 6 a.m. this morning, to watch that cluster of, it was pretty abysmal. Just not, and I don't know what it is about these London games, and there's just not usually a lot of action. I wonder why that is. And so for me, that's just frustrating. That's not even a football thing. That's just a personal thing. That's just me kind of, complaining. But yeah, man, I think I'm kind of concerned about some stuff. I'll be honest. This is not the Broncos that I really anticipated coming into this week.
I would agree. I was kind of in my mind just kind of envisioning 3 games in a row of just, Bronco football, just playing really good in all 3 phases, or at least really get intuitive, just I just really thought we would see a controlling victory today. We did get a lot of drama, and we did get to see an amazing defensive performance. But yeah, there are some things they need to work on for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The defensive performance was lights out spectacular, just like it kind of has been, honestly. It's up until week 6, which today. So we have a lot to talk about, lots of good stuff with the defense. But yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked about what we thought this game could be, and you said 30-9, and I was saying 30-6. And at times, especially basically all through the first half for me, and I know for you even into the third quarter, we're thinking, yeah, like this is going to be a dominant. And let me say this, it
Right.
should have been, it should have been a more dominant win for the Broncos. And you just wonder, like, man, is this the same team that took down the defending champs last week? Because it feels like sometimes you're watching two totally different teams, and I can't exactly pinpoint why that's happening. So, yeah, I mean, let's start with the offense and what your thoughts were on that.
Okay. Well, and I agree with you. I was really well into the third quarter, maybe even early fourth, and whenever they got that safety, and even after that. But for most of the game, I felt like everything was fine, even though we had a fumble on the first possession and they got a field goal. Oh well, they only got the field goal, right?
Right.
Even though they had the special teams play that got them another field goal, I just it was just never in my mind. I was not worried at all. I just thought we would, eventually they would put together a couple scores and just win the game.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the offense, I really was happy in the entire first half. I know they
Mm-hmm.
only scored 10 points, but outside of that fumble, I thought Bo looked crisp from the get go, and he was spreading the ball around. They didn't get the running game going as well as we have seen recently, but they were committed to it. I think the first 2 plays were carries. I think they
Right.
were everything was like so offensively I felt really good up until maybe, oh gosh, maybe maybe the safety. At
Right.
that point, I'm like, okay,
That was
and
such an eye roll moment for me, at least. I mean, you just don't really see that happen a lot, like the penalties in the back of the end zone for two
yeah,
points, and it was just like, are you kidding me? And that was kind of how I felt like the whole game. Waking up at 6 a.m. and immediately the two really bad special teams plays to put them in a position to kick field goals. It's just like, and we know that this team is better than that, and I just didn't want them hanging in at any point. And so it was frustrating to see the Jets. I don't even want to say that they had any production because they didn't. And so it's so weird. Like the score is in some ways really reflective of how that game went, but at the same time, I still think that the Broncos are such a better team.
yeah, and I think we have to remember that sometimes the games kind of take a shape. Like remember the Colts game, right? We know the Broncos can play defense. We knew that in week 2 when they played the Colts, yet that still ends up kind of a shootout with a lot of scoring. It just sometimes that's how the game is. Well, I think this was kind of it kind of as the game went on, it kind of became that. The Broncos had control. They were the only ones actually getting first downs in the first half. But
Mm-hmm.
as but the Jets were able to get into halftime with, it being a close game. And then it just kind of, as time went on, and give the Jets some credit because they were not playing great defense this year to up until today, but they do have some talent on that defense.
Yeah.
And they do have some new coaches and a new coaching staff and stuff. So let's not forget about that. We also have to remember that Aaron Glenn is a Sean Payton guy, so there's a connection there, and he understands as far as understanding tendencies and things like that. Um, but yeah, having said all that, we still needed to see better offense in the second half. One thing that's telling, and I know we talked about this. Okay, so they went for it on 4th and 6 in the
Mm-hmm.
second quarter, I believe,
Yeah,
and they get
I
a
was
nice play to.
yep.
But they're aggressive, right? And they get a nice play to Ingram. They convert. They end up getting their only touchdown on that drive. And yet later in the game, on 3rd and 10, or it might have been 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, they give up. They run a little fullback for 3 yards. They didn't really even try to get that first down.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Just punted it
so
away.
wow, yeah, they're basically playing the field position game, and so at that point you got to say, well, why? Because now I understand that you think, well, it's the Jets. We can do that because our defense is playing really good, which it was. But at the same time, I just think even if you have to call a timeout to think about it, decide, well, what kind of play do you want to run there? I think you have to go. You have to try to convert there. I would say this is the game where personally I kind of question some of the play calling and the strategy, about it. I felt that they should have been more aggressive on that 3rd and long, and I was a little surprised. And we got to talk about how the Jets played the end of the half.
Phew,
I
yeah,
thought that was, the only thing I could come up is, okay, they're thinking that they don't even want to try to run a 4-minute offense on Denver. They don't want to have to pass the ball at all. They just want to get to halftime and then get into an 8-minute offense to win the game. They want, I guess, right? Because why they're only like 20 yards from field goal range. Why would you not? You have a minute. Why would you not try to get points there? I've never seen the like.
I don't know. I guess you must be right about that because it doesn't make any football sense to me either. I can't even really think of another time where I've even seen something like that happen. Obviously our defense was playing good, but when it's such a close game and there's really no production on your offense, why would you not go for points there, right? And
Yes.
you get the ball at the
Yes.
beginning of the second half, and so I guess that's a part of it. But man, I it really had me kind of questioning, shaking my head, what's going on? It's just not, it's atypical,
Yeah.
and it didn't work out for him. So there you go. I totally agree with you. I think Bo had a really good first half. I think the offense was very productive in the first half. It was really a shame to see it go to kind of be null in the second half, and I was confused. I was like, man, you know, I'm not. Hey, they got Sauce Gardner back there. They've got a legit defense. They were able to stop our run today. So
Right.
I'm not saying that they're totally abysmal. I'm
Got
just
Quentin
saying,
Williams.
yeah, I'm just saying you seriously got everyone locked down in man-to-man coverage that well that we can't get any production. I mean, at some point you just got to think that's not a Jets thing. That's an offense thing. Like you just gotta. That's what I'm thinking at least. It not nearly as much production as I was anticipating. And it was really a shame because, like I said, I had anticipated this whole week that this was going to be a very dominant win. And I even thought this is exactly the game that we need for Bo Nix and this offense to finally, we've seen certain parts of the offense click really well. Like last week against the Eagles, controlling the line of scrimmage and running the ball effectively, which we hadn't been able to do weeks 1 through 4. And then just other little things like the connection between Bo and Evan Ingram was finally coming to fruition. This was kind of the game that I anticipated. Okay, all of those things are finally going to lock into place, and we're going to kind of see this offense that we have been envisioning, I think, for a while now, and it's kind of baffling to me that it wasn't as productive. I think maybe this is something that has gotten a little overlooked because I think a lot of it happened in the first half. But I'm really concerned, and we've said this the last few weeks too, I'm concerned with special teams. I don't understand the mistakes that are happening there. I don't understand why it seems every single week at this point there's been some really explosive play, that
Yeah.
over half of the Jets' points today came from the first 7 minutes of regulation where you're just giving up 40, 50, 60 yards basically in total to set them up to kick field goals. You can't do that. It's okay when it's the Jets, but it's not going to be okay when it's the Chargers, when it's the Chiefs, when it's any other team,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you on the special teams. And did you notice that before they did the Jets ran the fake punt, Darren Rizzi, the coordinator, was going crazy on the sidelines. Like they recognized that they were probably going to run a fake there. They told, and yet they still couldn't stop. Now it was only like a half a yard that they needed to get. So I'm not going to, it's kind of like a quarterback sneak, really. Yes, but the return yardage was bad. And I don't know, like you say, it's like a weekly occurrence. And I guess we just have to be hopeful that they clean it up. Now I did hear the Jets have been a good return team this year. Okay. So it's one of the things that they have been doing well. So, give them credit, I guess. But, yeah, that's a legitimate concern. And I guess the best thing about this game, I think we'll both agree on, is that the defense is special enough that, they can have a bad, special teams performance, and they can have offense that really only shows up for one half and then still get a win, because this kind of reminds me of 2015, where our defense is literally just like, they're the ones leading the way. And oh my gosh, let's go ahead and shift this into a little positive direction here, because my goodness, it was fun to watch those boys. They were menacing.
They just had a hang.
Cooper putting it away, and everybody. I think like 6 or 7 guys had a sack. They had 9 sacks. Do you know they have 30 sacks?
Yeah.
Yes, they have 30 sacks for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not to mention, I don't know if this is the Jets had -10 total yards in the air.
Passing.
Yeah.
Yes. Negative 10 passing yards.
Wow. I mean, that's and even then it kind of, and I'm not going to get back onto the negative stuff, but it's just kind of crazy that they were even able to put up 11 points against this defense, because you're right, man. And let's take a few minutes to just appreciate Hufanga. That guy is so much fun to watch for so many different reasons. I mean, he just is everywhere all at once. He does such a good job of keeping everything in front of him. He's up there at the line of scrimmage when you need him. He's making tackles when it's necessary. And not to mention, he's got the cool hair. You and I are always a big fan of that. We were, I know, pretty upset when Quinn Miners cut his dreads. So we have always
Right.
liked the guys who got that big kind of fro popping out of the end of the helmet, so you always know who it is. And yeah, man, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito. I mean, when you have something as
Yeah.
good as the 2015 defense, and I think this might be the first time that we've actually kind of directly compared the two, because I think Broncos fans kind of
Slow
hold
down.
the 2015 defense. No, I know that's what I'm going to say. The
Yeah,
Broncos
yeah,
fans
yeah, yeah.
hold the 2015 defense, to a very very high level, and just like the everyone's Hall of Fame in their mind, and they should, because there was never really, at least in the time that I have been alive, there was never a defense like it. I've never seen one, come close to it since. So I'm not saying that this defense is the same or better than that. I'm just saying I'm getting this nostalgic feeling that I remember having, when I was young and watching the 2015 defense, which was the kind of mentality of they can drive all they want, or it doesn't matter what kind of penalties they get to set us up, because there's no way they're going to score in this red zone. If anything, the Broncos
Right.
defense is going to push you out of it. And it's just
Hmm.
like, I know sometimes there's a little bit of history here, but you would talk about John Elway in that way. It didn't matter how far behind you were or how many points behind you were, you just always
Right.
kind of knew that that he could
You
keep you in it. And
believed, yeah.
that's, yes, exactly. And that's how I feel about this defense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Ah, man, Bo goes
Oh,
three and out, you know, run it up the gut three times in a row, whatever it is. But it's like almost exciting. Like, yeah, you know what? Give the ball back, to the offense.
yeah.
Let's see the D just tear them up.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
and that's exactly what happened today. They got
hmm
that final possession. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I watched a lot of different games today. But did they have a pretty good? Did the Jets get a pretty good return on that last possession, or was that a different
no,
game I'm
I
thinking
I
about?
I think you're
Okay.
thinking about a different game.
Well, with but the Broncos had punted from pretty deep, if I recall, because then they
Right.
get the ball like at their own 40.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
So
and so they only needed like 20 yards, 25 yards for a good shot at one. So, um, and yet, they just get it done. And it's very stressful as a fan. You hate to see the other team with the ball at the end, right? You'd rather
hmm
just be getting first downs, killing
Sure.
the clock, kneeling on the ball.
Sure.
But so it is more of a stressful ride experience. But when you see them ice it and you see them, get that sack, and then that's just awesome. It's a great feeling. And
Yep.
yeah, so I feel like that is the best, not only the best part for us as fans, but I think for the locker room as well. I think this is a type of game where they can, hey, we know that if maybe those boys on the other side are having a rough day, we'll pick
hmm
it up for them. And there's going to be times where if this Bronco team becomes true contenders, it's going to take more than the defense. So there will be times when maybe they're going to, Mahomey makes some plays against him or whatever. It's a high scoring game. And then the offense gets their back and the offense wins it, right? That's the type of team that we want them to be. Um, so yeah, I would say that I'm not terribly disappointed with the offense. And here's the reason. I feel like it's still a work in progress. And I think that's okay. I know it's week 6. Okay. I know these games are important and all that. But at the same time, it's there's still growth for Bro. And I think Bo had a solid game today. I'm not I didn't look at all the film on the all 22 or whatever, but based on the network coverage, it looked like he was playing well. They were moving the ball in the first half. When they weren't moving the ball in the second half, it didn't seem like he had anywhere to go. It seemed like
Right.
he was throwing away.
Sitting
He
there
was
making
he was not.
mistakes. He's not holding on to it too long or
Yes,
anything like that. Yeah,
he,
you're
he
right.
wasn't missing open guys. Now there might have been guys open that weren't on the screen. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying based on what I did see. But he never made the mistake. He never turned it over, and they got the dub. So I feel like we have to give the Jets some credit for playing defense. For whatever reason, they realized they weren't that was their only path to victory was to run the ball and to keep it close.
Yeah.
And to their credit, they were big underdogs, and they stayed in the game. So give them some credit. Now, having said that, I think we also need to look at something we haven't discussed yet, and that we had a big loss with our
Ben
guard,
Powers.
Ben Powers. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, we didn't see that affecting us like it did.
Yeah, yeah, I did not. That's not obviously we talked about the Ben Paros injury a little bit, and we knew that it was going to hurt, especially because our offensive line has just been a really bright spot, especially this offseason. I feel like there's a lot of hype. You even I think at one point mentioned that you were worried that not that they're overrated, but maybe just a little bit overhyped in some ways. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean Matt Pert got exposed today, and he had two penalties early on that were just automatically, I'm eye rolling, man, where's Ben Powers? I think that there were just times where he straight up got beat. It was a little bit discouraging. I think that was a big part of why we didn't have a lot of success on the ground today. Yeah, you don't
Mhm.
really realize how big those injuries are. So and there it is. So
Yeah. And Ben Powers has had a really good season, especially in the run game. I wonder, because when he got hurt, we found out he wasn't going to play. I heard somewhere that Palczewski might play guard, and Palcho's been really good. They've been bringing him in as a sixth guy when they in their power formation, and he played extremely well last year when McGlinchey was out, if you remember. So I thought, okay, well, that would be cool. And then I also heard, what is his name? The guy who was in Oregon. He was the center. Ah, anyways, I heard he was possibly going to be the backup, the guy that would play. He doesn't play. And it's okay. Well, you figure they know what they're doing. So it's Pert. Okay, fine. It seems like they have a very deep offensive line. And
mhm.
in terms of tackles, I would say that I know that they do. But I wonder if maybe they have to maybe check someone else out next week, or I don't know. Maybe Pert's just not ready. But
Yeah,
the coaches will look at the tape. They know better than us, right? How good
yeah.
or bad of a game he really had. Obviously, we see the penalties, and that's not cool. And again, we saw, what I think we're going to agree, that it was too many penalties again.
Again, yeah.
Pre-snap. And another thing I wanted to, when you mentioned the safety, you know, there was a time when teams just never if you had the ball at the 1 or the 2, you just always ran it up the gut the first play to get what they call breathing room.
Hmm.
And you don't need to pay. Yeah, great. Bo is great at not taking sacks. We know this. But sometimes offensive linemen hold, and sometimes they call holding when they don't hold. You're still taking a chance at giving up a safety. So I didn't love that play call. Yeah, I would say that I think sometimes Sean outsmarts himself a little bit, or kind of levels himself, and maybe with going against Aaron Glenn, he I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being too hard on him, but it
No,
seemed
I
like he could have.
I think you're right, and I totally agree with you. And that was the really one of the main takeaways today was man that Ben Powers injury really hurt. I just want to take one moment to thank Rico in the chat. Says excited you're live. Thank you, Rico. I'm also very excited that we're
Yes,
live. We're both excited. So excited, especially to hear from you guys. So we're just here kind of chit chatting away, carrying it on and on as we do. But
right.
we really would love to talk with you guys. If you watched the game today, did you wake up early? Were you satisfied? Were you a little bit annoyed, wishing maybe you'd snoozed a little longer? I'm curious. We'd love to hear from you guys because we do this to interact with you. Um, I think the reason why the Bulls penalty is really especially annoying is because of just kind of what I've already kind of carried on about. But you think about all the points that the Jets scored, two field goals early on that were realistically due to poor special teams plays. It's not like at no point did the
Hmm.
Jets really drive down the field, or we were talking about negative 10 yards of total offense in the air, passing. So it's not like we got beat there. So you're talking about 6 points basically that we gave them. I think you can say
Hmm.
that because I don't even know if they. I think
Hmm.
they had one first down on the second field goal, but the first one they didn't even have a first down. So you've given up 6 points there, and then you give up
Yeah,
another
yeah,
2 points on the penalty, and it's like, man, you
yeah.
at the very least it could have been 13-3, instead of 13-11, and I.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
win and
for
the
sure.
win the 1-0 is what matters the most. I get that, but at the same time, man, you're just shooting yourself in the foot here. Those were points that didn't have to be put on the board, and there they are.
I agree. I think, by the way, I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I think that I think they might have got it wrong, saying that it was Bulls. I think it might have been Miners that did the hold in the end zone.
Mm,
I
I
should have confirmed that,
I might have
but
just been,
either way, it doesn't really
Bowles is
matter.
kind of notorious for
You
that
know,
anyway.
he is, but with the Bulls has actually played extremely well this year.
Hmm.
And Miners
Hmm.
has too. Whoever it was, we're not gonna, um, you know, throw them into the fire too much because typically they do a great job. But I honestly am more annoyed with the play call. You don't need to drop back from there in a game
Yeah.
like this, especially a game like this. Just pound it. And by the way, I also feel, and I know you're going to agree with me on this one. It was a day where they were defending the screen extremely well. We didn't
Yeah.
have to have as many screen passes today. I
I,
mean,
if
um,
you're just tuning in, I just have this deep rooted hatred for the screen pass, and I think it's just because of the era that I grew up with the Broncos. That I mean, there with when it was the era of Nathaniel Hackett, man, it was the worst. You're throwing a bomb on first down, and then you're throwing a screen pass on second down, and it's at 3rd and 14, it's short of the sticks, another screen, and we're not gonna block. But there were a few
by the way,
times
did
today. Go ahead.
no, did they ever complete one of those bombs on first down?
Ooh,
I
that's a good
think maybe
question.
once they did. But then
Maybe
Hackett did that like almost every other game.
every
He did, I don't,
game.
but
Yeah,
that was almost always incomplete. Yeah.
it was ridiculous. The
Anyway, go
Hackett
ahead.
days. No, 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 you're right. Actually, you bring up something that I wanted to mention earlier because I think you brought up a really underrated point. And Broncos fans who have been kind of in the know for the last few years, I think will resonate with this. You said that it's a locker room thing with the defense. When you have a defense that can keep you in the game and that's going to play sometimes on both sides of the ball for you, that's huge. And if you recall, the first Russ's first and second 2 years with Denver, that was not the case. It was kind of a similar situation in that we weren't getting a lot of production on offense, really, not ever, especially not his
Right.
first year. But the defense was still very, maybe not quite to the level that it is now, but it was still very good.
Right.
Always typically a top 10, if not top 5 defense in the league. But the mentality behind it was completely different. I think there were plenty of
Yeah.
times where you could see on the sidelines, defensive players chirping at the offense. They're
Right.
not getting breaks. They're
Hmm.
exhausted and they're annoyed, and that's not the case here.
Yeah.
Hufunga, we mentioned, he when he came to Denver and they interviewed him about why he came to Denver
Yeah.
or what was so appealing. You know what he said? Bo Nix. And
Yeah.
nobody was saying that about Russell Wilson. So
Right.
that's just like a huge cultural difference, and you could totally see it on the field. When we need a play, when we need a big defensive stop. Bo even mentioned this in his presser earlier today. They asked him, about the defense, and he's like, in some ways, they almost play offense because they know what's
Hmm.
needed at a certain time, and they know how to, change the momentum of the game when the offense needs a break. And I think it's just time, and I think the defense is also confident that eventually these things are going to click, and Bo's going to. I think Bo's actually. I agree with you. He's played really good today. He's got it. He's got it figured out. But the production that we're kind of waiting for,
Yeah.
I think it's just on the
Yeah.
horizon.
I agree with you. And kind of getting back to where I was carrying on about the offense being a work in progress. We did see, I think, for the first time, we saw some fluidity with Evan Ingram. At
Yes.
least in that first half, you just kind of saw what we had kind of envisioned, and they also had some rhythm. And I think this is a thing that they can work on. And I'm going by what we've seen and what I hear Bo and the pressers say, some kind of what he hints at. I think maybe, again, I'm going back to the play calling, but maybe you just need to let them call 2 or 3 plays in a row
Hmm.
and leave that same personnel out there for a little while, and then just do some things where they can get more rhythm, because players respond to that. They play to momentum. You know what I mean? Especially a guy like and a running back like Dobbins. So I think that's something that I think that might be a Sean thing. He needs to maybe consider that a little bit. And
It totally is
I
a
don't know.
Sean thing. I think he even said that. I think in this presser this week, they asked him about the running backs being rotated in and out. They asked him about Harvey specifically, and
Right.
he said, yeah, he could, maybe I'm kind of holding him back in a way by not giving him more reps.
Yes.
And even like I think the tight
Hmm.
end part of this, like you brought up Evan Ingram, that's a good point because Nate Atkins had a touch today. I think the guy's probably
Sure.
caught the ball 2 times this year, you know? And I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. I would like to see us dedicate a little bit more time to Evan Ingram personally, but it seems like Sean Payton is just the kind of guy who's just going to rotate. We might not have a lot of 100-yard rushers, this year because that's just maybe not
Yes.
the nature
No.
of the offense.
Hmm. But we have seen them establish the run more often than not, the last few games. We have seen Ingram. We have seen Bo play at a high level, so it's still a work in progress, but as those things is they the more they do those things, the more likely they'll be to do it the next week,
Yeah.
and so I think we have a lot of reason to be encouraged that they will continue to improve offensively. And meantime, like a game like today is kind of perfect in a way because they still got the win,
Right.
and yet they still get humbled. We're like, hey, we gotta work. We need to be blocking better, right? I think that's the biggest thing is even in the first half we weren't controlling the line of scrimmage terribly well in terms of running the ball, like you'd mentioned. So we got to block better. We need to call plays better. It's not like they had a lot of drop balls or
Right.
overthrows or
Hmm.
I really think it was that they got out schemed, and they were not playing to rhythm. I don't know. I maybe maybe we'll learn more as the week goes on. Hear other people break it down. Because it really, and again, I don't want to take anything away from the Jets. They must have done some good things defensively. They must have made good adjustments, right? But it's really hard to put the finger on what happened to the offense in the second half.
Yeah.
What was it? Just a culmination of a few different things, or I don't
Man,
know.
and I'm sure Sean Payton has an answer for this. We just don't have that football mind, I suppose. But you just got to trust in him. I mean, you got all the pieces. I think that's really the important thing for Broncos country. It's not like we're playing the quarterback carousel game anymore. We're not concerned about who's going to be the guy in Denver for the next year. I think it's very clear that it's going to be Bo. We have all the pieces. We've got the offensive line. I even think we have the wide receiver core. Maybe some people disagree. I think we do. It's just about
I agree.
it's game 6 and you got to see it through. So that's it. We're just gonna have to see it through. And we talked about this last week, but we have the schedule, especially the next few weeks, that's gonna allow that. You know what I mean? Like if we were gonna hang and be 13-11 with any team, it might as well be the Jets. Before we have to march
Sure.
into
Yeah.
Kansas
Yeah. Yeah.
City. Another quick break. Rico
Yeah.
says, defense. Who is the Broncos defensive MVP that thus far this year? We might have the same answer on
Oh,
this.
Casa
I,
Bonito.
I was gonna say I think it's Casa Bonita, and obviously, maybe I should also say I feel like everyone kind of knows that it's Patrick. So he's like a kind of asterisk player that he's
Mhm.
always gonna be number one in my mind.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but Bonito just gives you
Yeah. No,
that
that's a great question.
yeah.
You could also make a case for Zach Allen,
Mm.
Cooper,
Hufunga.
Hufunga.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Who's the top five? That's a great question. One thing I don't want to get too involved because they're already talking about Nick Bonino, possible defensive player of the
DPOY,
year
sure.
type stuff. Yeah, you know how I feel about the hype, but there is one thing: if it gets if he continues to be on pace to chase the sack record,
Hmm.
I will follow that. That's a very prestigious record, and he is. I mean, but yeah, I think. Gosh, Rico, yeah, I would say Bonino, but you could say Sertan. You could say Sertan any year. Zach Allen, Cooper, Jonathan. gosh.
God, Alex
And by the
Singleton.
way, yeah. Wait a minute. But about I wouldn't say he's in this conversation, but he had a pretty good game today, and that's Riley Moss. You
Yeah,
know,
Riley
I
Moss.
think yeah.
You're right.
I mean, yeah. Well, today everybody had a good game from what I could see. It was just basically a party. you
Yeah.
know, and one thing we haven't talked about this yet. I've been really impressed with whatever Vance is doing. Um, because against a guy like Fields, and then all the quarterbacks we've played, a lot of them have had great mobility, and yet I think Fields had one play where he ran for like 7 or 8 yards today,
Mm-hmm.
where it was effective. But by and large, they are not getting yardage with their legs. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe he's having one of the interior guys just kind of square up or key or what they're doing, but keeping them in the pocket, and they're not. I don't know. Whatever they're doing, don't change, because
Yeah.
they are not only are they attacking and sacking, but the quarterbacks aren't getting away, because
Yeah.
for as much man coverage as the Broncos play, you see that every week. You see, and we'll see what happens with Jackson Dart next week, because that's what he's been doing. He's been making plays with his legs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a big test. I tend to think that maybe Jackson Dart, and all due respect, Giants fans should be excited, but I think he might get a little reality check this week coming up.
Yeah, I mean, here's what
Anyways,
we know through week 6 is we 100% can rely on our defense week in and week out. I really think it's very unlikely that they're going to be exposed on some multi-level, ridiculous 45 point
yeah,
500 plus yards of offense game.
yeah,
I just don't see that in the cards for
right.
this defense. I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's even possible, just with the way that they're playing right now. I'll answer Rico's question. I love everyone in the secondary. I love the defense, but it's got to be Nick Benito for me. I think he's just so nostalgic. He reminds me of Vaughn in so many ways, and the way that you can watch him on the line, counting out the snaps and trying to time it just perfectly, which is, I think, really what made Vaughn so, like, one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time, was his ability to get the timing just perfectly right. And Nick Benito has that too. He's so fun to watch. He's kind of built unlike other linebackers in some ways, I think, and I think that makes him really cool. But it's going to be Nick Benito for me. I had another point. Oh, yes, I wanted to respond to what you said about the quarterback scrambling. You're so right, and we said this, I think it was the most obvious in LA, because the Chargers were always the team where it didn't matter how close the game was or how good you were keeping the entire backfield, shut down. Justin Herbert was just always able to get away. Sometimes even better than Mahomes, at least when it came to
Against
us, I
us,
felt
yeah.
like. He is so
I
good,
get,
and
yeah, yeah, I
he's
would
good on his
agree.
feet. They blew us up. Like, I remember last year in LA, that was really what sold the deal, because our defense was playing good. It was just
Hmm.
Justin Herbert was always able to,
Yeah,
just bumping around the field, and, and,
yeah.
and there he goes, he's gone. So yeah, you're right. That's a kind of something that it's a little bit underrated, for our defense's performance,
Hmm.
but it's been really great. I think the tackling has been great. There's been concerns with that, I think, maybe last year and the year before, not wrapping guys up all the way, but it's been stellar. I don't know what the stats are exactly for, yards after contact, but they've got to be low, because the Broncos are really just shutting it down back
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I would say, to me, tackling just across the board is never what I think it should be in the league. But yeah, I would say the Broncos are probably better than most teams.
Yeah.
Um, uh, no, yeah. Look, I think that's the best thing about this game. The defense just, my goodness, this was one for the ages. I mean,
Yeah.
minus 10 pass yards, that hasn't happened since I think 1998.
23
Like the
years.
Chargers
Yeah,
had minus
something
20.
insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something to behold. And yeah, I think they only had like 32 yards in the first half, and then only 82 yards in the whole game. These are numbers that you don't see very often. And so it's not like, yeah, it was hard to wake up for this game, and it was stressful, and it was disappointing that they couldn't put it away and they let the Jets hang around. but we're going to remember this defensive performance, and
Yeah.
it'll be one of those, So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. It was a great defensive performance once again. So it's going to be interesting hosting the Giants and Jackson Dart. And I know you and I, Dad, we talked about this a little bit. And my opinion on Jackson Dart is very similar to yours. Sure, the Giants got a reason to be excited. I just think that there's this trend in which you weren't starting with much, if anything, at the quarterback slot to begin with. So any change that you're going to make is going to be probably a pretty good one. And the Giants are also no stranger to this either. They've been playing the quarterback carousel for a long time with Russ, with Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, So I don't
yeah.
know. I just think that sometimes with those kinds of players, those kinds of substitutions, Joshua Dobbs comes to mind. Jameis Winston comes to mind. There's magic usually for a few weeks, and I believe that. But usually it takes a team like the Broncos to shut it down, and that's what the Broncos did.
We did shut your.
Joshua Dobbs done after the Broncos, and
Yes,
Jameis Winston
that's what
done
I was
after the
thinking about.
Broncos. Yeah. So
Yes,
if there's
good
any time
point.
for
Yeah,
if there's any time for a reality check for a young quarterback, I mean this isn't quite the same,
yeah.
but even just week one, Cam Ward, that poor guy. It's not how I would want to start my NFL career. So if there's any time for a rude awakening for Jackson Dart, it's going to be this Sunday. What an
Yeah.
exciting week now.
Indeed, yeah, and that Scatterboo kid is interesting too. So it'll, yeah, I mean, and part of it is also teams get dangerous. They get energy sometimes. Like the Giants, watching that game. I mean, they're kicking the Eagles, who was their divisional opponent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're the champs, and they didn't just beat them like we did. They took them to the woodshed,
Right.
and you got these young guys, and they're just wow. All of a sudden, the Giants are a team that you don't necessarily pencil in as a win so easily. At
Sure.
the same time, I agree with you. I feel like this is a matchup the Broncos should capitalize on with their defense against those guys. Unless if they could get Scatterboo going early and keep it close, then okay, maybe. But as long as and they, by the way, they played the run extremely well too, and we noticed Malcolm Roach back in there.
Yes,
The
that is true.
Jets. That was obviously their plan, was just to run the ball and ask questions later, right? And I think maybe they had a couple runs that were over 6 yards or something. It's not, but they didn't get much. And the Broncos knew it was coming, and the game was always close, and yet they couldn't get it really going. So at one point, Kurt Warner says, I'm like, and Kurt Warner's a smart guy, okay? I'm not, but he was like, yeah, we're kind of waiting to see the Jets try to run play action because they're running the ball so well, or something like that. I'm like, I don't know
Yeah,
what game
I
you're
don't think
watching,
so.
man. I mean,
Yeah, I was thinking,
yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that because it wasn't even that. It was a few different times where I was like, is this guy watching the same football game as me? Because that's not how I would describe what I'm
yeah,
seeing right now. But they're just trying. Sometimes they word fluff it up,
yeah.
and it's
Or
whatever.
they
We're
try to
not.
keep it entertaining, right?
Yes, and realistically, you don't want to be in their shoes, right? I mean, you if you're not a Broncos fan or a Jets fan, you're bored when watching this game. You know what I mean? So
For sure.
they're just trying to make it as interesting as
Yes,
possible. Um,
absolutely.
so there's that part of it. Giants defense also, from what I understand, is not in any way superb or stellar. So once again, and I feel like I've said this, I feel like a little bit of a broken record, but hopefully this is the week where everything ching 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 works out for the offense and we just get everything clicking. Line of scrimmage is going to be
Yeah,
huge. I expect a big game from Dobbins and maybe even some more action from Harvey. Maybe they'll have a combined, 145
yeah,
yards
I
if
would like
Sean
to
is
see.
generous.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm a little more excited about the Giants game than I would have been. And don't get me wrong. And we talked about this when they were looking at Jackson for concussion. I was thinking, oh wow, wouldn't it be interesting if our old buddy Russ came to play next week?
Yeah, and
But I don't. We're not likely to see that.
no, unlikely. And Giants fans booing Russell Wilson off of after like two incomplete passes. I still think that's ridiculous. I
Yeah,
think that I Russell Wilson
Yeah.
is I still actually, maybe this is a little bit of a hot take. I still think he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Um, he's a little bit of a nomad right now. Obviously, not what he used to be, but come on, it's just you gotta.
Yeah.
And I'll also say they did this last year with Jameis Winston and with Joshua Dobbs, both teams, Minnesota and the Browns, just kind of like I don't know, like maybe you don't have an allegiance to. I don't want to harp on this. You know what? Forget I even said anything because it has nothing to do with the Broncos. I don't want to talk
Well,
about
how
it.
about the rest of the West? Let's talk about the Chargers and the Raiders and the Chiefs.
Yeah, so
Raiders won.
Raiders won. Yippee. Chargers won.
They
Yippee.
did play Tennessee.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
Chargers won. Oh,
and
the
just
fish had them too, it looked like.
yeah, it's a real shame,
Hmm.
and we were really hoping that would have set us apart for sure. But hey, Chiefs are only up 3 against the Lions. It's 6-3 right now. 1 minute left in the first quarter,
Okay.
so that would be
Okay.
huge. Obviously, we're Lions fans tonight. It's a shame that we couldn't get that half a game ahead of the Chargers, but there's only one way to beat them at this point,
Full
and
game.
that every week it just seems like the game in Denver against the Chargers is going to be basically a playoff game. Is what it seems like to me.
I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit on that one, and not this, not that it won't be important. It very likely could be. I'm. I just think. I just think it's the Chiefs still. I don't know. And again, I could be very wrong, but I kind of and maybe this is wishful thinking. I just don't know if the Chargers are going to hold up with their injuries.
Sure.
They almost lost to the fish. It just seems like the last few weeks anybody can beat them right now.
Yeah.
And if they keep dropping, but yeah, I don't like. I could be over. The bottom line is we do need to play them again, and if we're not up, if we don't have a 2-game lead on them by then, we will probably have to win. So you're very likely right. I guess maybe I'm just too fixated on that Chiefs game in Denver. I think it's week
Well,
11. I just
of
feel like,
course, that's going to be a statement game no
you
matter
know,
what.
yeah, it's, I will say this though. I was thinking about this today. We get so, and the AFC West is so competitive right now. I think it might be on some level, maybe a little disappointing at this point. Like I say, I feel like the Chargers are kind of beat down. I feel like the Chiefs, they're 2-3, and they're still the champs, and we always give them their flowers. But I kind of feel like they're going to get thumped tonight by the Lions. Maybe I'm wrong, but I
Man,
just
I
think they're
sure
going to
hope
get
so.
beat pretty soundly. I
If we
hope
can
so too.
have if we can
And
have 2 games on the Chiefs, that would be huge, especially with New York and
yes,
Dallas the next few weeks.
yes. I think the Broncos kind of look like the best team in the West right now, but they don't even look that great. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
I don't know. I just think the maybe I'm reaching. I don't know.
I don't think it's
I'm
a
thinking
reach.
about
I
it too
think
much,
I
probably.
think that defensively, absolutely, and just because of what they're able to do on that side of the ball, 100%. I think that I need to see a little bit more production and consistency from the offense before I crown them. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, you've got the Chargers, albeit all their injuries, they still came out on top of Miami and they still put up 29 points, and we put up 13 against the
Yeah.
Jets. So I
Fair
just kind of
enough.
sometimes look at it just for what it is, and they beat us. So um,
True.
I'm
Right.
not going to rule out the Chargers. I think that they are in injury
Yeah.
trouble 100%. I don't know how, no matter what we do, always end up talking good about the Chargers and the Chiefs. Do we have
Yeah,
any
you're
other
right.
thoughts? Do we have any other thoughts about today? Anything that I missed? Anything we need to discuss before we kind of wrap it up here?
I think we covered it pretty good.
I think
It's,
so.
it's more stressful of a game than we anticipated, but still a win and a cool defensive performance that we got to see. And
Yeah.
looking forward to next week.
What about you guys, Generation Orange viewers? Anything else that we're missing? Any thoughts that you might have? So always, it's so interesting to see other people's perspectives on football. You hash things out, and my dad and I hash things out all the time. and you feel like you get a really good understanding. And so it's always so interesting to hear somebody who disagrees or who sees something a different way.
Right.
Um, so if there's anything we missed, please let us know in the chat. I know there's only a few of you guys watching. Thank you so much for tuning in today, by the way. It's
Yes.
been so much fun.
Yes. Thank
I
you.
cannot wait for more of this kind of conversational thing
Yes.
with you guys
Yes.
because
Yes. Thank you, Rico, for getting involved and joining us. That's,
th-
that's so
thank
cool. I
you,
can't wait
Rico.
for more of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sure hopefully we'll see Rico again next week, as well as everyone else who tuned in today. Thank you so much once again. We really appreciate it. Do not forget to like and subscribe to Generation Orange. This is our first time going live, and I apologize if there was any technical difficulties that I kind of overlooked. But more to come. We've got a lot of exciting stuff in store for you guys, lots of plans for this channel. We'd love to have you along for the ride. Thank you once again so much for watching. I'm Adriana. This is my dad, Les, and